Good morning,
Right.
Edna.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, Edna, and hi. We're back for our monthly Women in Sectional Title webinar. It's wonderful to see quite a few newcomers actually onto this platform. Our vision at WIST is to equip women with the skills to harness their potential, with a lot of information to make sure that they really pursue a career in this exciting and vibrant industry of ours, which is worthwhile and which is rewarding. I'm also very happy to tell you that Women in Sectional Title, we were invited to the Property Expo at the Sandton Convention Centre during the course of this last weekend. And out of the 6 panelists, there were 5 ladies, which is heartening to see. We also worked together with the PPRA, the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority, on that stage. And I'm happy to tell you that on the 15th of December, all managing agents will be able to register to become property practitioners, thereby professionalizing the industry. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to be here today without our sponsors. Thank you so much to Zfin, CIA, PK of Octagon, Sectional Title Solutions, and We Connect You. We really, really appreciate you and value your support in building this beautiful place where it's a safe space for women and, of course, for men who support women. I am so excited to announce and introduce our next guest. Dr. Sharon King Gabrielides. She's the founder and CEO of Key Steps Corporate Training. She has an honors degree in psychology. She's a dynamic facilitator, speaker, and executive coach with over 25 years of experience in leadership development and organization. Sharon's PhD thesis contributed a framework for holistic and sustainable leadership development and was published by Rutgers University in the United States of America. She's also been inducted into the Educators Hall of Fame. That was in 2020. And I'm so happy to have you on board. And we realize what a privilege it is. You train in the corporate space. And I know that corporates will definitely be paying lots of money to hear you speak. And you've been so gracious in giving us your time today. Thank you, Sharon.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Marina. It's a really exciting platform that you've got here. So I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. I know previously one of the topics that you discussed at another in another forum was key steps to being exceptionally you through EQ. I wonder if you could just unpack that for us and tell the participants if they're not aware of what EQ is and how the ways that we can use EQ to thrive in any environment that we're working in.
Mary, I mean, that really is what I do every single day, is working with leaders to be more emotionally intelligent. And I think the good news is that more and more corporates, business owners are realizing that EQ is not a soft and a fluffy thing. So sometimes we've thought about emotional intelligence as being, we're going to get out the tissues and, we're going to hug trees or sing Kumbaya, or I don't know what the thoughts were around that. But the critical skill that it is finally being seen. So I'd love to talk to that question. I think Robert Cooper's actually got one of my favorite definitions of emotional intelligence. And it's really that ability to sense, to understand, and to effectively apply the power and acumen of emotions as a source of human energy, information, connection, and influence. And that's really what we all have to do every day. I think, especially thinking of your environment, just how many conversations you've got to influence, you've got to get outcomes, So the ability, and in fact, all futurists are saying the same thing. I've got a lot of colleagues that are leading global futurists, and they all say that if we want to survive in this DVUCAD world, and here I am throwing another acronym around here. So that's that. You might have heard of the disruptive, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, disruptive world that we live in, that the most important skills we need are our higher order human capabilities, because we've got the AI coming in that's capable of doing lots of reporting, lots of rudimentary things that we might have needed to do before, but that ability to up our game is critical. And I think some stats is actually always quite nice. And maybe if you're quick enough, you might want to hop in the chat and actually answer with me, because I think that also helps you in terms of your mind being engaged and where your mind's at. So I'd also just like to invite everybody on the line just to pause, take this time for you. You know, you've invested in dialing in, and, you know, stop what's happening in the background as much as you can and really, really be present. And even if you're not answering in the chat, maybe you can just answer in your mind's eye. You know, software developers, how much faster do you think they develop software if they've got a high EQ? 3 times faster. So I'm going to go pretty quick because I know that there's a lot that we want to talk about today. Sales consultants, 12 times more revenue on average they bring in. When the Royal Navy started recruiting based on emotional intelligence, they could predict success 3 times better. And then I think the legal space, which obviously you are interested in here, is law firm partners. There was a major global study done, and that where partners were of a high EQ, on average, they brought in 139% more revenue when they had a high EQ versus a low EQ. I recently spoke with SAICA, the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, and was looking at just some of the current research in the financial space, because there isn't a huge amount of that. Actually, only the last 3 years has there been dedicated focus globally on good research there, and that auditors who have a high EQ have better professional skepticism. And that's very relevant in the legal space as well. They can handle.
I just want to ask, which auditors actually do have a high EQ? Are they any?
I always say I'm never going to be unemployed, Marina, that's for sure. I think, you know, just maybe one last thing I want to say on this question is 4 pillars is just how aware am I of myself? What pushes my buttons? What motivates me? Because the word move, the word motivate, the word emotion, they all have the same Latin root, and that root is imovere, which means to move. So if we want to move ourselves to greater success, and you want to be able to manage, the minute we are hijacked by an emotion, even a positive one, where like, I'm so excited about something, I'm not accessing my neocortex. So the neuroscience shows that those pathways are interrupted and you can't think as well as you need to. So if we want to be able to have good relational abilities, the best communication skills, grasp other people's needs, cope with demands and pressures, EQ is what we want to be developing. And it's not a quick fix, it's a journey. So there is work that needs to be done there. The good news is it can keep increasing. I mean, our IQ dips and starts declining from the age of 23. So I can probably hazard a good guess that all of us on the line are in trouble if we're relying just on IQ, that luckily EQ can keep growing through the course of a lifetime.
So, Sharon, if we're going to bring this into context as well, we deal with trustees and of bodies corporate and directors of homeowners associations on a daily basis. And generally, I would say typically in these schemes, you've got between 3 and 8 directors or trustees who've got to work together, who've got to make really sometimes profound calls on exactly what route they're going to take in the complex, and you know, ranges from maintenance to finances to important decisions. So this joint decision making, always difficult with different personalities. How would you say that you can effectively and without acrimony and conflict make decisions together with people who are maybe not like-minded?
I think it's important, Marina, that we actually don't see conflict as being a bad thing. And sometimes there can be that frame that conflict is negative, but actually conflict can be quite healthy, provided we know how to keep it constructive. And one of the things that, you know, straight away comes to mind as you ask that question is that we should understand our negotiation and communication style, because that's really what we're talking about here. So now I've got to deal with these others and, of course, me. Do I even know how I typically step into these kinds of conversations? I think Roger Shell has got a wonderful model. He's the professor at Wharton University and really specializes in negotiation. It's an area that we do a lot of work as well. So we have quite in-depth negotiation skills and trainings. And there's good assessments you can do to actually look at your style. So if you've got a high concern for your own needs and you're assertive, which we should be able to do, and a high concern for other people's needs, we're prepared to cooperate. That brings the collaborative negotiation. That means we can do win-win. If we've got a high concern for our own needs and a low concern for others' needs, then we're competing. If I've got a high concern for your needs, but not mine, then I'm just accommodating. If we're not concerned either way, and that can be tricky sometimes. Sometimes, the mail that gets in through is low on my priority list. And, the other person's needs don't really get taken into account as well as they should, because it's not really part of my needs. That would be considered to be avoiding. And somewhere in the middle lies compromising. And through our training, we do go into the dangers of compromise. Sometimes it's a win-win, sometimes it's a win-lose. So understanding your style and the way you approach conversations is important. And then knowing how's your counterpart, as you build relationships, how are they typically going to step in? Because if you're dealing with somebody who is really competitive and they've got a very, very high concern for their needs, and you risk being accommodating, you know what the outcome's going to be there. It's going to be more of a lose for you and a win for them. So it's how you steer that conversation and how you also sometimes have to match. If you're dealing with somebody competitive, although collaborative is a great strategy, you want to make sure that you know their approach and that you are ready to make sure that you really do step into the space with your facts, boundaries, that competitive negotiations take care of their own backs. So I think that would be the one thing that I'd suggest. I think the second one is, if we can, collaborative principled negotiators, problem solvers who navigate these kind of conflicts you're talking about typically do 4 things well. They separate people from the problem. So it's as dealing with this challenge, and it's not that it's personal. It's not me against you. We don't polarize our views, we add them. And we've got to watch out in conversation that we don't use the word but. So if I say to Marina, I really hear where you're coming from, but I've just said, your needs go here, mine are about to go there. If I say to you, thanks, Marina, I can hear what you're really needing to happen here. And this is what we need. You join those things. So but in conversation does this. So the nuances of language is important in this too. Focus on interests and not on positions. Explore options, and then also make sure that you are reaching results based on standards. And if you've got those standards to back up that this is how this homeowners association works, this is the documents. I think from a legal perspective, often we are good at that. You want to have that information on hand so that you can reach those results based on standards. And knowing the personality style models. I wish we had, all the time in the world to go into all of this, but whether it's the Enneagram, whether it's, DISC profiling, to get some skills and knowledge around personality profiling can be really helpful there. Drivers like to be in control and they like the bottom line. So if you don't start there and you start with too much detail, you're going to lose them, and, they can become frustrated and irritated in the conversation. So dealing with that is important as well.
Mm. The Enneagram's a fantastic form of education, really. I remember we did a course a while ago. If anyone wants to do something so interesting, go and find an Enneagram practitioner. Very, very interesting. So, Sharon, we also need to talk through the relationships between managing agents and trustees. Trustees can sometimes be business people who are highly assertive and a little bit aggressive, who want what they want, and they're used to getting what they want in their own environment. Your managing agents will appoint a portfolio manager to run the building, and that portfolio manager might be quite young and respectful, so they don't want to cause trouble. And very often you have that kind of friction where the managing agent is told you're actually not doing your job, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, by these people who can be relatively intimidating. What kind of message would you send to our portfolio managers for more favorable outcomes in how to deal with that kind of relationship?
I think, Marina, one of the most important things is that to really, really be prepared when you step into the conversation. That skilled negotiators spend 4 times longer preparing from the other party's perspective than they do their own. And so often we prepare our facts, go through maybe your email threads before engaging with the individual. But do we really step into their worlds and be mindful of where they're coming from, and to think about the challenges they might throw at you, what they could bring in the conversation? It's important as well that we keep conversations on the high ground, even if they're on the low ground. So stopping, breathing, that the effects and impact of breathing, just tenfold. There's article after article on it, and I have got a quick little link that we can fill in some feedback at the end, and I'm happy to share any extra resources. And breathing rewires our brains. It reduces our cortisol, your adrenaline, so that you can access your neocortex, you can think better, and you can navigate through these conversations better. So the benefits: 4, 7, 8 breathing. You can even do it right now as you're sitting here. So in through your nose for the count of 4, hold it for about the count of 7, and then out through the mouth is important for the count of 8. And I know you don't want to be like, in a conversation. So the pre-work of that, even body posture. Amy Cuddy's research on when if you open your body language out, it helps your testosterone to rise, which brings about an element of confidence. And that's important. So actually your body language doesn't just change how other people see you, but it actually changes your internal chemistry and enables you to be more confident. And then really listen, because what can happen when we're in the face of somebody who's bullying and a bit threatening is our survival instinct kicks in. We're in more of that fight-flight mode. I'm not listening as well as I need to, and then I don't have the information that I need. So really being able to lean in and also suspend judgment. And Colette can actually pop in a LinkedIn article there. She can maybe pop 1 or 2 of my articles that I think might be connected to this and relevant for you. And suspending judgment. The minute we go into judgment, and I keep thinking, this person's wrong, and they're being unreasonable, they're ridiculous, our brain is deleting rather than absorbing. And you want to absorb from a perspective of being able to use that information to navigate that conversation better. And of course, being able to stand our ground in an assertive and a constructive way, maintaining your tone of voice, eye contact. And it's okay to take a break, to say, look, I need a couple of minutes. I want to just look through some of this information. I'll come back to you. And then take those few minutes to manage yourself and your state so that you step back into that conversation. I know in my 20s, I had to get good at the sleeping no, because I was really at risk of accommodating. And in the face of a bully, I might just give in for the sake of peace. And it was that practice of, let me check, and I'll come back to you. And then doing due diligence, making the decision and coming back, rather than being cornered and caught off guard, because bullies like to do that.
They do. We'll speak a little bit more about bullies, but I remember also at one of the courses that I did, there was something so useful for me. So when you're coming into the room, and as you say, open up the space, is to put all your things spread out. So you're spreading out, you're not like a little person in the middle of the table. You've spread yourself out. And that really made a very big difference to my meetings with other people. For me, it made a difference for me. And also, I suppose, things like the distinguish, I tell our attorneys, have a nice pen, for example, when you're writing. Have a, be somebody that somebody's going to look up to and not want to kind of, push into the ground. With bullies, Sharon, it's heartbreaking. I had a client the other day. She came to see me, little old lady who lives in a complex out in the south, and she's all alone. I don't think she has much family. And the trustees around her are bullying her. They put a big trellis door right up against her wall, so it cuts out her view. And while she was talking to me, she's literally shaking because it was such a bullying situation. And especially we get questions from single ladies who feel fobbed off by trustees and feel bullied. It's a big subject of mine. I hate bullies. Tell us more. I mean, you've given us some tips. What else can we learn about that?
I think, Maria, it's such a tricky one. You know, we've got a bullying and harassment masterclass that we do. And I think the examples you've just shared really would fall in the category of somebody who's bullying. And in fact, harassment, because harassment is where it's those gender pieces that come in. So that's, you know, that bullying and harassment are actually two different things. So I think what we're even hearing you saying is actually a bit of harassment as well. And often, you know, depending on the degree of it, if you've got somebody who's got narcissistic tendencies and it's in that extreme, which, I mean, granted, is not going to be everybody that you're dealing with, but you do have 20% of people in senior positions, and it sounds like you are dealing with some of those, that the research says we're actually looking at about 22% where there's narcissism, and actually having the conversations with them doesn't do much to change anything. In fact, if you tell them how their bullying is bothering you, it just gives them further ammunition, because bullies actually take pleasure out of having that power over. That's the definition of bullying, where it's, you know, power over others and with the intent to harm and to get your own way. So if there's other channels of reporting, I don't know your environment well enough, you know, of how can those things be directed, I would actually suggest that if it's a really severe situation. If it's less severe, then making sure that you've got your facts on hand, knowing her legal rights, whether it's actually okay for that trellis door to be right up on the boundary wall. And then the pieces we've spoken about, body language, maybe even having a supporting person, a friend that could come around, you know, have the conversation with her if she feels better, if she's got a male person with her. And that's sad, that is the reality sometimes, that, you know, so, but the power posing, if you could share those tips with her, having her facts on hand. And I actually had a situation where the complex I lived in for many years, I had somebody across the way from us that was bipolar, and we actually worked from there as well. And he was quite senior and very involved in the complex, and he would come across, swear, shout, scream at my staff, go berserk if they parked kind of 1 centimeter over, you know, a line. And I just said to them, kill him with kindness. Stand your ground. Don't let him push you around. Don't move the car. If your car's parked fine, leave your car as it is and know your rights. And then just kill him with kindness. Don't get caught up in the craziness. And thank goodness he eventually did retire down and move down to George. And he came with bottles of wine saying we're the best neighbors he's ever had. And he didn't push us around, but we didn't retaliate, because you get into a war with somebody like that and they live across from you. And it doesn't serve anybody at the end of the day, Marina. So I'm not saying roll over and play dead, but just make sure that you stand your ground in effective professional ways as much as possible.
Definitely. I think know your battles. And as you say, those kind of personalities will drag you in. They'll drag you in and get you caught up in it.
They love it. They love it. They like being the persecutor. They want you to be the victim. So you actually have to step out of that Cartman drama triangle is actually what we're talking about. And you want to step into the empowerment triangle. So challenging appropriately, you know, the assertiveness tips we've spoken about. Listen, get as much information as possible, because often they hang themselves up in their own rope as well, if you can just listen, but not easy. I know it's heartbreaking for me as well. I do a lot of these workshops, and the things that I hear, yeah, they're just horrible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think Women in Sectional Title, this platform has gained the most traction with portfolio managers, because we do, you know, we talk about hard issues, and we talk about, as you said, this isn't actually a soft issue, but not the legal issue, let's say. It's not the legal issue. And I think from many of them, when I've done talks around the country, they will come to me and say they often feel overwhelmed, because one portfolio manager is often dealing with so many buildings, you know, too many buildings. There's no space to breathe. You're getting hundreds of emails every single day. And yeah, I often feel a degree of empathy with that. So what would you say? How would you say that they could approach that situation?
You know, I think people are so stressed and stretched everywhere, and that challenge to do more with less is, you know, prevalent. So I think we've got to watch out for thinking that if I fill every minute of my day, that I'm going to be more productive, because actually it makes us less productive. It's counterproductive. So we compromise our thinking. I mean, I don't know if, you know, the audience has seen it, but I'm actually happy. I've got a slide here that I can just copy and paste. into the chat as well. It might have been seen by some of you, but the EEG research that's gone out around what happens if you are back to back with things, that by your second and third meeting, the beta activity in the brain is off the charts, and we are really dealing with a stressed out no-brainer state. So having 5 minutes between meetings, having time to stop, take a few deep breaths, walk outside in the grass. That might feel like I've got no time to do that, but my message really is you don't have time not to do that, because when you can do that, you can think clearer. Then it means time management skills can kick in, like prioritizing. And also another key is to make sure, Kavi said it, is that you're not just prioritizing what's on the schedule, but you're scheduling your priorities. And there's the big rock analogy, where if you put the big rocks in at the end, after we've got pebbles and stone and water, I know that analogy has floated around for many years, that the big rocks don't fit in if you put them in last. But if you get the big rocks in your jar of life first, and then fill in the other pieces, it's actually you don't have to lose the really, really important things, because that's my worry. The burnout stats are just off the charts, Marina, globally. And it's just mismanagement of ourselves and not being aware of our mental health and well-being. So time management, if there's skills where you think you could learn how to help AI to do certain things for you, if you need a brush up on prioritizing, it can be really useful just to do a refresher on time and even on stress management.
And the actual managing agency, the principle of a managing agency, how can they arrange the workplace better to support mental health of the employees?
I think something there that, comes immediately to mind is that we can't pay lip service to it. We do have to live it. So it needs to start with ourselves. If I'm sending mails at 11 o'clock at night and I'm telling everybody that they shouldn't be working excessively long working hours, I send out the message as a managing agent that I'm saying it, but I do something different. So the message is, actually, if we want to get ahead around here, or we want to be successful, we have to do these things. I'm down to a 4-day work week now. I might do some things on a Friday morning, but I fetch my daughter from school on a Friday, and Friday afternoons are our time. And honestly, I thought 2 years back, when this inkling and notion of just really living wellness and living quality life, I had that feeling of, I don't know if I can do this. And I thought I need to take my own coaching advice and say, don't let what I can't do in the short term prevent me from what I can do in the long term. And then to start to put long-term boundaries in place. And I would say important is to teach all of the people in your teams the skills of emotional intelligence. And, having a spa day or a wellness day, or somebody do an hour talk on wellness. I'm not saying they don't add value, but it's a Band-Aid. If there are issues that need to be dealt with, you actually need to get under them, and you've got to equip people, and you've got to live it yourself. And also just actually one more thing, Marina, is also where there is mental unwellness, having empathy in all of the conversations actually we've been talking about is important. Recognizing people's feelings, even if you don't agree with them, just recognizing that they are valid for that individual and respecting those is critical. Then we don't have to pick it up. So I don't have to pick up doing something about somebody else's well-being, but I want to help them to learn how to fish and to do something for themselves. And that might be seeing a mental health care professional. So we're not doctors on the line. I might have a background in psychology, but I don't practice as a psychologist every day. And I'm not a psychiatrist. So I do executive coaching, but I know where that referral line is and where people need to get help. So having the right support around you and a support network is really important for managers.
And speaking of that, you do a lot of work in the corporate space. Do you feel that the trend is correct? And is it going in the right direction with all the big corporates that are you getting sort of more business because people are recognizing that their staff members need this?
Marina, it's been, I can't tell you, it's why I had to do the 4-day work week. I was at that point 2 years ago where I thought if I don't put some brakes on here, I could myself burn out because of just the volume. It's remarkable. The projects that we're involved in now, hundreds of leaders across the globe, We've had interest from, we're working with Sibanye Stillwater. I know locally it's like, oh, shame, they're going through some challenges, but they need this even more. But the Finland team have come on board now saying we've got to extend this right into Europe. So we work with the big banks, and it's really exciting, very, very exciting to see organizations really, really wanting to shift culture and to make a difference. One of my biggest clients, I start with their execs in Jan, and we're cascading a massive culture transformation. I mean, you're looking at an organization of 55,000 people, and they want to maintain their great results because they are one of the leading financial institutions globally, but at a lower human cost. That's the drive. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. We've got massive buy-in on it. And Colette, again, can maybe stick a link through on our leadership masterclasses. But yeah, I think, unfortunately, there's still some lip service and not enough action on the ground. So we all need to work harder at that.
Definitely. And I think if there are any principals from managing agents listening, women in sectional title would be very interested in putting together programs and projects through our speakers, as well. Something important there, definitely. You've spoken about this really large organization. Obviously, they have a lot of teams. There needs to be team building. So how can we, as working professionals, strengthen our teams, to work for better relationships and to actually improve our service? Because that's really what it's all about. That's going to distinguish one portfolio manager from another.
Yeah. So a small tip around rapport that I know it's in one of our aspects within our Future Fit EQ masterclasses. We do communication, and often when I teach people about rapport, the fact that you can actually learn to build rapport. Some people we just click with, and you get that feeling like I've known them forever, and it's easy. And then there's those relationships where it's like, it just isn't as easy to get that connection. And, the neuroscience and neurolinguistic programming have yielded some very interesting work in the past 2 decades. And that ability to build rapport through body language. So matching the other person's body language. And of course, we're not saying monkey see, monkey do. If I touch my face and you touch your face, people are going to think we're a bit, weird here. But am I in tune with their way of engaging? If a person uses their hands a great deal and they talk fast, and then I respond, okay, thanks for sharing that with me. It's like there's such a disconnect. It feels like, this person just doesn't have that same energy, that same impetus. So being aware of matching some of those visual things that we can see from a body language perspective. Another one I draw a column down the right-hand side of my diary. And when I'm doing briefing meetings, chatting with clients, and in my coaching sessions, I write down the words that people use often and use those words back at them in the conversation, whether it's your proposals, whether it's your emails. If I'm replying to a mail, I'll say, dear Marina, scroll down, what did you say? Please, can you send me the proposal for X? I'm not going to respond and say I've attached the course outline. I'll use the word proposal. So the matching of that language can be a great way of building that, feeling of commonality and common ground. And this is all just because of mirror neurons in the brain. So when we see that resonance, it feels the trust builds. Oxytocin gets released, which helps with collaboration. So that would be a small tip. And then I think also just working in time on actually getting to know people at a human level, because often we're very transactional in our business approach. And I'm an Enneagram 3, which is the achiever. I've got lots of red in my personality style, just kind of want to get to the point and get things done. But that bit of connection, human to human, and it doesn't have to be huge amounts of conversation, but just investing in that relationship goes a long way to ongoing outcomes. And we see that negotiation outcomes, we do better if we express emotion, if we recognize people's emotions. You're more likely to do better coming out of difficult, stressful conversations.
Brilliant. So I could actually listen to you all day, to be honest. I really could. Thank you for that. And your PhD thesis basically contributed a framework for the holistic and sustainable leadership skills and development. Do you want to unpack that framework for us, and let's see how we could possibly take something out of that for our participants?
Happy to. I think, Colette, you can maybe also send through a link to the resources section on our website, because there are resources there. My PhD is actually in there as well. There's an article published with Henley from last year as well that's connected to an aspect of my PhD. I wish we had more time because I'd be able to get into more things. But I think I'm just going to quickly share just a really high level of this. And I think, Cole, you could also maybe pop in that link to the Financial Mail interview, that piece on EQ that I think would probably interest everyone here having a look at that as well. But I'm going to share it within the chat, just the essence of that framework. It was my passion starting my PhD was just, how do we show how we do development in effective ways? It's my clients want to know if they're investing in training for their leaders, for themselves. They want to know it gets the right return on investment. So that was one of the core parts, was to show the return on investment we got. So that was obviously good for me in practice, was, you know, the return was actually better than they could have hoped for. So I think that's also helped Marina in terms of getting buy-in for the work as well. And then this was the framework that came out, and this is coming out from other data analysts, other researchers got involved with me. So I was triangulating, and they looked at what are, you know, the data was focused on what are the critical pieces if we want sustainable long-term development. And that foundational piece you see there is the importance of the facilitator. So, you know, of course, if it's a business school that you're working with, or if you're working with the likes of a company like we are, like Key Steps, you want to make sure that whoever's leading this development work really can be in the role of a steward, that they've taken care of their own development, and, you know, that we're not just there doing some kind of theoretical learning. So we're very experiential in our approach to development. So if you had to come in and work with us on communication skills, we tackle listening experientially. And I have, you know, the head of Melville Douglas coming into a session with me last year. He said, I saw listening on the program for the morning. I wanted to dull out. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Here I am, and I'm now going to do listening. He said, but geez, what I learned, because it's experiential. It's not the theory of learning. We all know it. It's easy. You know, you've heard it 100 times. It's in the experience of having difficult conversations. What happens for us? What happens with our emotions? What happens with other people? So that the foundation. And I would say for you in your own development, you've got to have a great success team around you. Who's on your personal board of directors? I've got a brilliant body talk practitioner. I've got a spiritual advisor, somebody I work with in terms of my spiritual pieces. If I didn't see Mel every month, I know that aspect of my life would get neglected. So it's important for me. Yours might be church or religion or whatever that is for you, but to make sure that you really have a good team around you. And I mean, I pay dearly for these people. I've got my own therapist. We've got our own family therapist. I'm not going to ask a friend for some advice on Mila and some of her sensory challenges. I want to be going to the right people to get the right support. So I think they're just so critical, is that foundation is key. And then cohort learning, so learning in groups. So development does work better if we're rubbing up against other people and we're ironing out those scotomas or those blind spots. So doing some experiential work is important. Getting group feedback, building that trust in the group. So I'm part of 3 masterminds, and I know my business would not be where it is if I didn't work with those mastermind teams. And we really do rub up against each other and challenge each other. And then challenging and shifting paradigms. So we've got to be able to be vulnerable and to unpack our stuff. And that's why you can see the importance of, if you are going to do development work, it's got to be done in a safe space with a trusting group of people. And then you want to be able to challenge. The white paper I've just published with Henley Business School, they wanted to collaborate with me and publish the Keys framework, is a piece on shifting those limiting beliefs, those challenging the paradigms and stuff that keeps us stuck. I mean, I grew up believing I couldn't speak in public because I didn't have to pretend to be sick in high school when there was a speech to be done. I was sick when there was a speech to be done. So when I went back to my 20-year matric reunion, they were like, you do what for a living? It was like the most least likely. So I know that this worked through my own space and obviously through the research, that it really helps to bring about those results. And then you've got to be applying it. And that's where the experiential learning and development is key. And the last bit there, I know just watching our time here, is that it isn't a quick fix. It's a journey. So if you really want to develop the people within your teams, it's not a let's do a 2-hour webinar. And Marina, I know the value of these webinars is enormous for that slice of what you're doing. So you're clear on the aim here, and you get great results with that aim. But if you want to do deep development work, it's not going to happen in a 2-hour webinar. And that's actually why I left corporate. So I started Key Steps in 2007 after 11 and a half years in corporate learning and development. And it was hard to step out as an entrepreneur, but we were just getting such pressure to do a half-day EQ program. You can't do a half-day EQ program. It's journey work. And there needs to be at least a 6-month investment of drip-fed learning that we ongoingly go back, integrate, practice. That's when we see those really, really exceptional results and deep transformation and shifts in culture.
No, absolutely. And I think the journey part of it is something that is actually to be enjoyed. You know, it's something that might take time, but it's to be enjoyed and to be embraced. So I just wanted to ask you, Paul, there's one question here.
Yes.
Paul de Stadler. So he says, I'm not sure if it is Paul on his computer or if it's a lady on his computer, but we always welcome questions from men as well. Both parties try to come to a sort of understanding of what each party is wanting. They always maintain a very professional level of communication. So Paul is saying that it was good advice that both parties need to try to come to some sort of understanding of what each party is wanting. I think that was when you were talking about that kind of mutual respect. So there was just a comment on that. And again,
and it was, Marina. I did actually react to Paul when he had shared it there. Yes. No, it was I think he was just echoing what a difference that can make.
Yes, and it's just mutual respect. For me, I think it's about mutual respect. And if somebody's not respecting you, it's time to definitely, it is Paul. Hello, Paul. Welcome. I'm so happy that you joined us. Excellent. And I've seen you on here before, so well done for that. Yeah, I think it's just important that everybody speaks to everybody with respect. And again, just to treat others as you would want to be treated. That's something that's always stayed with me from many years ago. Just treat other people like you want to be treated.
But Marina, I want to quickly do an upgrade to that golden rule, because I grew up with that as well. And in our workshops, I challenge a little bit on that. And I say, you know what, for basics, that's a wonderful golden rule. And I'm glad I grew up with it. But actually, what we're learning more and more is that we've got to treat people the way they would like to be treated. And that's kind of like that platinum rule is, I might love straight to the point, let's get this thing done. And meantime, I'm dealing with a managing agent who loves to chat. And, then I've got to kind of know that that's such an important part of this relationship building for that individual, and then treat that person the way they want to be treated, which pushes us out of our comfort zones quite a lot.
Interesting. I think for me, I need to learn a lot about that, because I'm similar to you, Sharon, and I'm also a 3 on the Enneagram, and sometimes teamwork and consultation, and I just want to go by myself and just get things done. And it's been really vital to me to learn to step back and not to always want to be at the forefront of things and gaining that attention. It's more listening. That's an incredible insight, just the one sentence that you said there. Thank you for that. So I think huge appreciation to you, Sharon, for joining us today, and I hope that a lot of managing agents actually have a look into what you guys do and maybe look at doing something across the board with portfolio managers. I
put a link into the chat. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I've put a link. If anybody wants to hop in there, give us some feedback. We do respect all the POPI regulations. If you're happy to share your email address, we're happy to pop you some extra resources as well. I know things can get a bit scattered, sprinkled through a chat. So we've got some consolidated resources that I'm happy to send as well. So I just popped that link in there.
Thank you. Thanks, Sharon. You're an absolute star. And you also do courses for MS Word, Excel, all those courses?
We do. I actually started my career as a Microsoft trainer. So although I don't do the Microsoft pieces myself anymore, we've got an amazing team of facilitators. So we do. And again, there it's also very much we look at examples from, your working environment. So if we're looking at, dashboard reporting, or, we're looking at pivots, it's not just here's some standard exercises, but very much the integration. And we've been looking a lot at Office 365, how to optimize using Office 365, because people struggle with your OneNote, your SharePoint, what are all those things? How do we get integration, and how do we really make things work? So that's been a very popular program this year as well.
Sure. Well, I'm definitely going to do the one or two programs. I think that my secretary Lola will be exceptionally grateful, or eternally grateful to you guys if I learned a little bit more and did stop relying on you so much. So thank you for that, Sharon. You've been a star. I think another thing to just bear in mind in sectional title from my experience is to just keep the perspective, keep everything in perspective. Don't let anything get too big and heavy and hard, and keep your sense of humor. Until we see you next month, which is, I can't believe, the last month of the year. Take care, be safe, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Sharon.
It's a pleasure. And thanks for, like Kitasha, I see Kio has put information in the chat there as well. So if you want to use that link, fill in, and just thanks to everybody.
Excellent.
Thanks to you, Marina.
Thank you. Bye now. Bye-bye.